This is Mark Mullinex, and welcome back to our class on Taoism, a course that courses through the paths of each of the 81 verses of Tao Te Ching, episode by episode. Today's verse is number 55, Made for Joy.
You were made for joy, child. The feet of you were carved for that. The ankles of you run for that. The rise of the rain, the sift of wind, the drop of a red star on a far water rim, an endless catalog of shouts, laughters, silent contemplations. They made you from day to day for joy, child. A poem by Carl Sandburg. And from Bob Dylan, may you always know the truth and see the lights surrounding you. Forever young, may you stay forever young.
We have several voices this week that comprises what can only be a community choir of voices. We're all in the same room together as we record today at Lake Chattooga near Hayesville, North Carolina. So I'm going to ask each person to come up and introduce themselves one by one and maybe say a couple of sentences about who they are when they're not on the microphone. So Nancy Osborne, who has started us off, will come first, please.
Hi, I'm Nancy Osborne, originally from Eden, North Carolina, and now from Asheville, North Carolina.
Matt.
I am Matthew, and I am a student at Madison Middle School, and I am from North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Terry, and I am a nurse from Madison County, North Carolina.
This is Beth Honeycutt. I live in Mars Hill, North Carolina. I'm a mom of 3, a wife, and I get to do work that's very fulfilling to me, serving birth to 5 children and their families.
Hi, this is Michael. I am a member of the Circle of Mercy congregation, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina.
This is Tamara Puffer, and I'm a Presbyterian minister who lives in Asheville, North Carolina.
This is Melvis Madrigal once again. For the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, I have decided to return with my Circle of Mercy family.
So, Terry Farless, I'm going to ask you to come up and start us off with a reading of verse 55.
Verse 55, perfected by virtue. When virtue possesses a person, she resembles a newborn child, whom bees do not sting, nor snakes and scorpions attack. Wild animals will not attack her, nor will birds of prey strike. Though her bones flex and her muscles are soft, her grasp is firm, and her arousal is palpable even though she knows nothing of adult matters. Or she may shout loudly all the day long and not become hoarse. These certify that her potency and strength are already perfected and unhindered. Conforming with the changeless is enlightenment. Growing in this constancy is a blessing, but to stockpile an overabundance of vitality does not bode well. For when lust and impulses tamper with your life's power, Chi, expect nothing good. The more exalted and controlling, the faster the decline and decay. No Tao there. Resist Tao, and you're finished.
Thank you. A childlike reinterpretation of this verse might sound like this, and Beth Honeycutt will say it for us right now.
Born perfected. When someone knows their inner goodness, they are like a newborn baby. Bees don't sting them, and snakes and scorpions don't attack. Wild animals won't harm them, and birds of prey leave them alone. The baby's bones are soft and their muscles are gentle, but their grip is strong. The voice is power. Listen to them. This shows their energy and wisdom are already perfect, even though they know nothing about the grown-up world. Understanding and following Tao that never changes is wisdom. Growing in this wisdom is a blessing. But if you try to keep too much energy for yourself, it won't end well. If your desires and impulses take over, it can harm your life's energy. The more you try to control everything, the faster things fall apart. If you go against Tao's natural way, you won't succeed.
If you want, and you can, not if you're driving though or handling heavy equipment, please consider closing your eyes and start a silent moment of remembrance. Let me take you back. Whether in your memory or in your activated imagination, when you were young, innocent of the world's ways, that time of innocence may have been for you or for someone you know, a time before parents, culture, school, media, and other such sources of information on how to be or act as a mature person according to the customs and expectations of your family, your culture, or the ideas unique to your place, your chance placement in the world, before all these had a chance to make an impact on you or on that person. You were born free, without those time or place-specific feelings of duty or socially understood agreements that one has to live into, certain shared worries and socially imposed shoulds and should nots, each and every one, shall we say, an agreement with your society. And it's based almost entirely upon the place and the time in which you're alive. I'm talking about you and me, 3 to 4 years old, before these unwritten but understood by all agreements got a toehold within you. I'm talking about when your actions and thoughts were artless and unself-conscious. I remember my then 4-year-old daughter when she and I were watching a ballet on television. I think it was Swan Lake. My daughter started her own, let's say, interpretation and imitation of the dancers on the screen. High-class ballet, to me, was an acquired and cultured appreciation. But to her, ballet was a participatory sport. As dancers went this way and that, so too did her body. Not so much pirouetting, but pounding. Her every movement, however, was a joyous, chaotic, and reckless disregard for body discipline and beat awareness. She did not care who Tchaikovsky or Baryshnikov were. Those were my acquired and oh so curated set of concerns. I was wondering only about one thing, whether this bundle of bumbling and jumbled joy might not someday become a disciplined or even famous dancer for the world's great choreographers. Meanwhile, my daughter was just being joyful. She was being herself before the offered senses of self presented themselves to her by culture, by me, by high-pressure schooling, to mold her into a somebody. So what happens with this unadulterated joy of being innocent? What happens to that bouncing and joyful child as she or he matures? At age 4, joy for my daughter was raw, unconditioned, uninterpreted, unanalyzed, and unexploited, or in Taoist terms, an uncarved block. See verse treatments of 18, 19, and 28 for a refresher course on the uncarved block. But at age 11 or 17, when culture implanted in her a high premium on showing ability or on usefulness to society than on her prior freedom, she was sure to become more cautious with what she did. Her performances became less spontaneous and more thought out, less curious and more cautious. Is anyone looking? What will my parents or friends think? As most of us mature, we don't want that uncarved block of who we naturally are to show up much anymore. And we clothe that block, we perfume that block, we camouflage that block by blocking it out of our conscious awareness, never to bother us again. After all, we have resumes to build. Eyes still closed, perhaps all of us might recall how and when culture's artifice and artificial standards arrived in your life with so many voices that seem so authoritative to your now very self-conscious self. This marketing, this propaganda arrived through rules, expectations, shoulds and musts from usually well-meaning family, usually well-meaning schools and religious houses, through media, through watching others behave. It's like the way to adult was something in the water they handed us to drink. They offered us shiny arrays of triggers to us, disguised as an arsenal of choices on how to behave, achieve, and, quote, mature, unquote, in acceptable ways into a distinctive and so-called adult in that culture. If you do not cooperate with or choose to think like that culture or consume like that culture or dress like that culture's idea of success and pretty much blend in and not stand out, except as one who is an exemplar and model of these marketing propaganda messages, you got branded a misfit. What did all this steady diet of propaganda and marketing do to us? It made us too careful, self-conscious. It planted in us this inner censor where eventually it wasn't the culture that gave you expectations. No, we had become blindly obedient to society's version of what a Mark or a Nancy or a Jordan should look like and sound like and smell like. Culture had its own outpost and censor in our heads. We did not have to be told what to do anymore. Oh no. The propaganda and marketing voices were now ensconced in our heads, and we personified someone else's expectations.
The lunatic is in my head. The lunatic is in my head. You raise the blade. You make the change. You rearrange me till I'm sane. You lock the door and throw away the key. There's someone in my head, but it's not me. From Pink Floyd, Brain Damage.
Every era shackles its citizens with invisible restraints.
The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping or questioning their chains is to make sure they never know they're in prison. Dostoevsky.
This being a cultural captive is mentally a thing that one picks up and carries around with them. And rare are the times we get to recognize, much less unload that burden and just be as we were born as a person born freed, liberated, and clear of the cultural conditioning that begins its work on us the moment of our birth. You're just clay on the culture's potter's wheel, in thrall of culture's molds. It becomes well nigh impossible to change our shape, for the cultural patterns are so strong, so rewarding, but in perverse sorts of ways. We grew up rooted in natural joy, but exchanged those roots for lesser visions to become less joyful as we grew conscious that there were scripts to play, editors both inside and outside our heads, always watching, listening, taking notes. Taken with an urge to dance or create or be spontaneously joyful, we suffer a moment of self-consciousness, and the urge to create is killed. If it won't help me get into that college, or help me make more money, or advance me socially, forget about it. Before all this brain surgery that society does, we were born where nothing is good or bad. Nothing to conform is to be a person of original integrity, as one dense with and full of Tao. As Shakespeare has Hamlet saying, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. A state where there are no culturally grafted voices, like we saw in the bait and switch episode on verse 50. The sage is described like this.
One hears about the sage who excels at flourishing. While abroad, wild animals do not attack him, nor do soldiers' weapons cause him alarm. The rhino can find no target for its horn. Tigers cannot aim to target their claws. Soldiers find no vulnerable target for their weapons to pierce. Why? Because his body preserves no target for death.
We call this a state of innocence, this no target for death. But don't we assume that it's somehow okay to lose it or leave behind that state of innocence? Our ideas of maturity become, put away the child in us. It's just childish gibberish. But the put away the childish message gets interpreted as put away the childlike. Store her in some culturally conditioned closet, some accepted deep freeze, never to bother us again. But there's this huge difference between the childish and the childlike. Jesus, pointing to kids, said that the kingdom of God is strong in them. Is there not a 4-year-old still in me? An 8-year-old still wondering about the big, wide world? Do you still have that 15-year-old within you who sends you into wondrous reading tangents, bends your path to those less traveled ways, and prompts me still to ask those soul-opening what-if questions? Greta Thunberg, Mary, Mother of Jesus, Antigone, Mozart, Anne Frank, Joan of Arc, teenagers, every one of them. What if I listened to my heart and soul of a young person? What if?
Unless you become like little children, you cannot know the meaning of life, for your minds must be cleared of the falsehoods of this realm if you are to be taught eternal truth. Jesus from the Gospel according to Thomas. The young do not know enough to be prudent, and therefore they attempt the impossible and achieve it generation after generation. Pearl Buck.
So where are we in life? Do we find ourselves where we have painted ourselves into some corner and then maybe cooperated with the paintwork? Or perfumed our true self with culture's fragrances and cosmetics? And have we justified all this painting with very plausible justifications? Family, obligations, health, career, I know. But please, don't forget who you used to be and who that person wanted to be. I know life is hard. We've had our challenges, the racism, the sexism, and the other tiny boxes society may point you to, saying in so many words, know your place. But there's no excuse large enough to shut down our hearts, to block out our heart's joy. Sure, we can be engineered for worry. We can be conditioned for work. We can be broken in for responsibility, equipped to be fearful. The marketing and propaganda is a kind of soul tax that we pay and pay and pay. But we are made for spontaneity and freedom. Our original innocence and boundless joy is a need of the human soul as much as food is a need of the human body. Deprive a soul of that, and the body likewise loses its appetite for food. We get so well adjusted to life and settle down, lose our curiosity, conform, get so obedient, and then we die before we die. And we lose that original joy. It gets covered up by so many ways and messages, like those taxing and mind-filling thoughts like, I don't like the way I look. I wish I was a different person. I need to compete harder just to stay ahead. I focus on my imperfections. I need a career that'll make me rich, famous, unique. I am poor and need, or I don't have enough of. So we can be engineered for worry, conditioned for work that can be an outright contradiction of who we are. We can be broken in like a horse for responsibility. We can become adjusted to just about anything. But we are made for childlike exuberance and innocence. Remember that person whom we used to be? The one who dreamed their exciting dreams? Remember how fresh and wondrous life seemed to be? But now have we become fearful, anxious, insecure? Taxes, every one. These are the tolls that we have imposed upon ourselves to get on the get along highway. I've spoken enough about how we can actually conspire with non-joy. We think too much. We go down culture's well-traveled paths that have no future, that do not align with our roots and their virtue, or in Taoist terms, do not align with our Taoist roots and their virtue. There is good news, however. We can return to Tao in a process that Aristotle describes like this, in which we are rooted to that which is always desirable in itself, and never, never for the sake of something else. Joy and happiness are who we are, not merely means to some ends. We're made for excellence. Excellence that corresponds both to our roots and Tao and our expressions of Tao's or virtue. A balance needs to be struck between our need for work and career and our need for unbridled joy. But most of us, if the truth is known, probably opt for the first. Get the work done, we were told as kids, then you can play. Are we still colonized by this teaching and teach it still? But this cultural priority of someone else's values, when practiced all the time, conspires against our humanity. Yes, we should remember our addresses and phone numbers. It's good to set our alarm clocks for work we may or may not enjoy, but we should remember we're also made for exuberance. Whosoever would be fully alive, that person must also be a nonconformist to culture. And as our verse says, conform with that is changeless. Annie Dillard writes in her book, The Writing Life, one of the things I know about living is this: open it all, shoot it, play it, lose it, all, right away, every time. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe and find ashes. And in the room is Beth Honeycutt, who gave me that quote 25 years ago. Two tunes call to us each day. One is the somber societal dirges that remind us the rent's due, and the future must be taken care of, and that resources are scarce, and we must meter out our joy in tiny doses, usually after working all year during that very, very short vacation. The other tune is the more joyous harmony for which we are made, from our muscles to minds to hearts to souls, for joyous, spontaneous exaltation, and the present moment must be taken care of too. Let us not cut such thin slices of spiritual bread and call that a feast. We are made for more. Innocence, unvarnished joy, is a participatory, not a spectator sport. No miracle vaccine exists that can immunize us against the side effects of becoming serious adults, taught oh so well that we must be about the business of making the money, paying the rent, developing that unique social persona on social media, as if these are the higher callings of life. The good news is that we can return to this original state of spontaneity, for that is how we were born. It is our natural state. Because the key part of verse 55 is here. Conforming with the changeless is enlightenment. Growing in this constancy is a blessing. Conforming with and ever adjusting to the ever-shifting standards of a changing culture is not enlightenment. For when we work to become so well adjusted to the popular norms of the day, our separation from Tao and its innocence is the hardest work we do. What, Mark? Why? Because when we are separated from our innocent, joyful self, we live the hardest life possible. It's like we pave over the roots we discussed in the previous verse 54, the roots of Tao, and overplant these roots with misery, shallow, artificial commitments, and goals for which we really have no buy-in. We do it out of mere duty sometimes. But freedom's always there. That never twice the same message in a bottle that keeps washing up on our shores. But are we busy doing stuff? How soon shall we ever see, much less care, to break the bottles, much less their code? Can we break the programming of small expectations and consider spontaneity and joy a sign we are in Tao, and we know Tao is in us? This is a sacred awareness, an original sanctified gift, a joy, an exuberance. Are you ready? It's simple. It's just not easy. One caveat. Not everyone will like it when and if you shed your so-called adult camouflage of who you've become and remember who you used to be, complete with all your dreams, excitements, and joys of being innocent. There will be cultural costs to pay. You might lose friends. Family won't understand. You may even come to doubt yourself. You may have to change careers, locations, lose loved ones who are cheering you on in your adult pursuits. Just as an addict has to make amends and reorganize their entire lives differently so as to return to their original freedom and keep their addiction triggers on the down low, so might we. But just know not everyone will be cool with these returns to original self we make and uncover again who we really are. Emily McDowell Finding yourself is not really how it works. You're not a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, an unlearning, an excavation, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. And there's more good news. What gets in the way of the way, or Tao, is the way home. That is exactly where you're blocked, stymied, paralyzed, captives, whatever verb you might use. That is the doorway to the way. Your captivity contains the key of your return to Tao. How? Get curious. Ask yourself in that curious way that you used to be, why am I so ensnared? Why can't I think one thought clearly? Where's my blockage? Why do I pad my resume instead of build my life in free joy? Why do I feel gridlocked? As Joseph Campbell advised, where you stumble is the place where you also find your treasure. Your way out of yourself leads the way back in. The same door from which you thought you were leaving Tao is the very same door back into Tao. You are closer than you might think. I guess the only thing now is to decide to find that door. Homework. This week. Nah, forget that. Today, cut loose, go a little crazy, follow the drumbeat of joy already inside. Do whatever movement the music you hear inspires you to dance. It does not have to be perfect, or disciplined, or rational, for joy is the thing. This may be your time to recover misplaced or forgotten ancestral wisdoms, to repair the wounds in self and community caused by our misplacing or our forgetting, and then reimagine our original golden standards, flexing your bones and softening your trained muscles. May you catch the courage to dream something original and spontaneous back into being. Why? Because you and your neighbors may need your truest self in the times to come. Welcome. If anybody could come up and say, Mullinax, you're strange, you're weird, and start a conversation, you're certainly welcome to. Right?
This podcast is an original work, designed, written, and produced by many, and I had a bunch of help from a choir of friends and voices, some of whom have already been voices on our podcast. Thank you, Nancy, Matt, Terry, Beth, Michael, Tamara, and Melvis. Podcast artwork is by Audrey Davis. The Put Your Roots Down song is graciously provided by Molly Hartwell. The copyright for quotations from Tao Te Ching is held by Fortress Press. May your days begin rooted in spontaneous joy and peace, so you may know and practice, moment by moment, the hope of which our world is in great need.
Are you listening?